argue over who has the right and who doesn't to invade, or we can heal and transcend this ancient addiction to war. Greetings and salutations, fellow life forms in ambulatory meat sacks. It's Sunday, March 6th, 2022. It's 9:47 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I'd like to open with a quote from a musician that some of y'all may or may not remember. And I quote, "I would like to see every single soldier on every single side just take off their helmet, unbuckle their kit, lay down your rifle, and sit down at the side of some shady lane and say, nope, I ain't gonna kill nobody. Plenty of rich folks want to fight. Give them the guns." Woody Guthrie.
This is the Almost Daily ZenCast. Hello, and Namaste. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I am your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Let's get started.
Greetings, friends, fam, followers, audience. Welcome to all of you. Those of you test driving the show, those of you kicking the tires, those of you in for the long haul. All you lovers and haters, whether you dig this show or are trying to find reasons to pan it, I say thank you for being here in the shared hallucinatory space of the Imaginarium that we create together, whether we realize it or not, when we tune in to each other's mind waves through the words I speak in this podcast. I am your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zappa. And as always, at my side, the trusty, the ever-silently stoic animatronic DJ Zed, bringing you the latest and the greatest of the Discotheque Synthetica robot dance music from another dimension, coded for you lovingly in animatronic digital song language that is unintelligible to the human ear other than in the sounds you hear when I push play. On today's show, we shall be randomly, I guess that's the word depending on which timeline you're tuning in from, randomly, exploring the quite misunderstood and disabused idea of peace. What does it mean to you, dear listener? And what do you think it means to everybody else? contemplate that for just a fraction of a moment. Take the time. Clear your mind and think, peace. What does it mean to me? What does it mean to all others? Just for me. For shits and giggles. Join in as we kick off today's episode of the Almost Daily ZenCast. Perhaps to define peace, we must first take a moment to investigate its antithesis, something we are probably all too painfully familiar with. Of course, it must be identified and called out. Conflict. But before we begin, let us remember the wisdom our sage brother Joseph Campbell brings us from the Hindu Upanishads. I just mispronounced that and I apologize to all my Hindu friends. The Hindu Upanishads. In the beginning, there was only the great self reflected in the form of a person. Reflecting, it found nothing but itself, and its first word was, "This I am." This I am. So it is also found in the Christian Bible. God says, "I am that which I am. Thus I am." What are you? Who are you? As the worm so curiously asks Alice in the looking glass. What are we, if nothing more than the sense of my self-being? Change my mind. Tell me that that's a lie. I mean, are you your name? No, your name helps identify you amongst many others. Are you your history? It's just what you've lived through. It's just the roller coaster ride you're roller coaster riding. Are you your bank account? No, but it sure as hell helps make your life easy and convenient if you have a nice fat one. Trust, oh, woe is me, it sucks when you don't. But that is not that which you are. Atman Anatman Satnam. For those who know, you know. If those who don't, look it up. That might be hard to find because it's my own construction. I don't know that there's a big reference to that in the source material. Those are 3 different words I've used in a way that others may not have had used before. But there's nothing new under the sun, friends. Nothing at all. For from the day that figuratively and or maybe almost literally, although of course nothing can be literal about the past. Let's put a pin in that up on the giant corkboard of ideas we need to remember and discuss more thoroughly in the future and in the past. But either way, since Cain killed Abel, or Abel killed Cain, depending on which timeline you're tuning in from, for there are many timelines, dear friends, and most of them so insignificantly not quite different from each other because they're just running all the variables, and some of the variables are mundane AF. But that's another subject for another day. Pin on the corkboard. Since Cain killed Abel to today, we have lived, you and I, dear friends, as these delightful entities known as life beings, life forms, humans, peoples, with an S, with a Z. The variables are many. And we have cowered in fear of conflict. We have raged in the bloodthirst of revenge. We have prayed in the absence of peace. And we have blissfully delighted in forgetting in the brief moments that we do indeed encounter that peace. And yet we rage on. Whatever shall we do about this god-awful mess that we're in, friends and family? How many conflicts are there ongoing in your timeline? It varies, but on average, it's too many. Currently, the timeline I find myself situated in contextually here as I sit sharing my thoughts with you over this platform of the interwebs, utilizing my free speech and critical reasoning skills to the best of my ability. Real, raw, and radically unscripted, ain't no one telling me what to say to you. And thus, I do not insist you believe me blindly, but rather contemplate and think for yourself, question and investigate on your own. But apparently there are at least some 30 plus, seemingly, in my personal point of view, unnecessary violent conflicts going on in the world. Violence in Central African Republic, the Boko Haram military in Nigeria, Al-Shabaab in Somalia and Kenya, the Islamist militancy in Pakistan, the Mali war, the instability in the DRC, Tigray war in Ethiopia, instability in Egypt, instability in Lebanon, India, Pakistan conflict. There's that whole thing with Iran and the US, the Southern Sudanese civil war, the Libyan civil war, the Yemeni civil war, instability in Iraq, the Syrian civil war, war in Afghanistan, and then of course the most delightfully, painfully, openly in your face and yet ignored Israeli-Palestine conflict. That goes on forever despite all the claims of ending and establishing peace. Kurdish-Turkish conflict, the Nagorno, I can never pronounce that correctly, my tongue just doesn't want to roll the R that way, the Nagorno Karabakh, forgive me folks, forgive me, mea culpa, I didn't warm up enough, but the conflict between them, and of course the most recent, and not to be belittled, friends, for if you fall into that complacency, which side are you helping? But the newest addition to the endless conflict-orama bowl, painfully beset upon with misinformation and misdirection in all directions, Russian invasion of Ukraine. There are many rabbit holes of debate, discussion, and distractionary wedge issue treadmilling that we could get into. And yes, I coined those terms myself. If you've never heard them before, welcome to my lexicon. What I ask you, friends, what I ask of you whenever you join, and if this was not obvious to you yet as you perused my podcast show, whether you're new, midterm, or long-term, I say this to you now for the purposes of reinforcement and introduction. I beg of you, lay down your assumptions, your presumptions, your biases, your political party platforms, and think of this as if you were a human being still deeply connected to your inner child and the innocence from your youth, from before the indoctrination into whatever conformancy platform you are a part of. And I say that without judgment and without disrespect. And I say that to everyone. And I say that about all ideological constructs. Let's not get into the raging debate about which ones are righteous and which ones are evil. Because that's part of the psyop. That's part of, and I don't mean the big giant fruit you could make a crazy stew out of. I mean the treadmill of endless, distractionary, conflict-generating, intractable disagreement. We are not here, may I be so bold as to suggest for your contemplation, dear fellow life forms, we are not here to brutally massacre one another over imaginary land rights. We are not here to butcher one another in organized murder for profit. For any cause, for any rationale, for any excuse. Call me crazy, but I simply and most sincerely reject any attempt to rationalize it. Because in the end, those who suffer the most almost always have very little to do with any of those reasonings, rationales, explanations, theories, facts, etc. And at the core, there is a moral dilemma about engaging in violent, armed, militarized conflict for the purposes of quote-unquote solving problems, real, imagined, or otherwise. And that's that the moment we become butchers, it becomes irrelevant what moral high ground, real or perceived or conditioned, was used to excuse it, to trigger it, to rationalize its instigation. And I humbly propose to you that there is and has always been a spiritual calling, organic and real and difficult to perceive, thus illusory and mysterious, but very genuinely of high urgency and high importance. A spiritual calling to heal ourselves as individuals, right? There's no passing the buck. You want to fix the world? Step 0 is turn within. Hold yourself accountable, and that ain't easy. No one wants to do it, no matter how or where you are in life, and how you started out, and address the trauma that is deeply repressed within your own inner mind, world, spirit, soul, energy bodies, however you need to describe it to get there. That which you are is a confluence of events, right? You, as an individual, dear friend, and audience member, are not a solid object of inertness. You are a million things happening at once. As a delightful meme reminds us, and this is at Chats Void, which is Chats with the Void. There's a little, it's a beautiful, like, 4-panel comic, blue line, black and white sketch meme that's just delightful. And it's a little baby chick, and it's talking to a, I don't know what this is, but it looks like a flaming orb of raw consciousness. And it reminds me of imagery used to depict awareness or enlightenment in ancient art. But, ask the artist what it means, but I think it represents the void, right? And the little baby chick in the first panel is apparently saying, when I really zone out, I feel less like a single being and more like a reflection off of everything's surface. In the second panel, the floating, flamey, mini little orby thing seems to pop into existence as another little baby chick of a different species with big, huge, kind of scary-looking eyeballs, but also sitting there friendly. And it speaks to the lonely black and white baby chicken chick. And I quote, I mean, you kind of are, aren't you? Third panel is a close-up of this new blue, big-eyed spirit chicken. And it's saying in the third panel, what is the self other than an illusion that helps our cells navigate existence? In the final cell of this comic, the baby chick is saying, what? But is now enveloped in the wavy blue vibratory glowiness of having received this wisdom. And the orb, the flamey orb from the first panel is now levitating above its head. And it's a beautiful way to approach a very complex and abstract, nuanced and mind-blowing subject, which is we are a multiplicity of selves, even in our mundane, ordinary experience of being just little old me, sitting here by myself, doing nothing, right? And that this is not some insane idea, but something that can be phenomenologically understood. The words tend to fail because it is such a complex experience that our language is not quite up to the task of accurately describing it beyond these artistic approaches and or these spiritual attempts and or these way signs that can only sort of point you in the right direction. Why is this meaningful? Because it is the long neglected thread, the through line, that connects the things that make sense and identifies the things that do not. If we know ourselves, and everyone's heard the phrase, know thyself, right? It's passé. It's so commonly referenced that we don't even find any awe in considering it, because we just speed past it like it was a pencil on the street. We wouldn't see it in a car, right? You wouldn't even notice driving over it. A speed bump designed to cause axle rod damage so that you freak and stop and drive safely down a neighborhood street, etc. That you would notice. I exaggerate for hyperbole, etc. Dear friends, as above, so below, as within, so without, are words that mean more than we give them credit for. And not just because that guru or this weirdo or that, Hindu person said it, but because there's a phenomena available to us in this mundane life we're living, sitting there, watching the world go by, dreading the fact that World War III is closer than ever from actually becoming a reality, and not just a sick, disgusting lack of qualification for these 30-some-odd ongoing, interrelated, and yet supposedly totally not worthy of being called World War III, endless grinding conflicts around this planet. So many things to discuss, from the most recent of current events to how the most abstract of Zen mystical wisdom applies. But let us cleanse the palate a bit. DJ Zed is over there tapping his animatronic fingers so subtly at me, indicating that I am running a bit behind schedule. Calling Darkness. Oh, we just recently played this one. Do we want to play it again? Okay, playing again. Calling Darkness into Night, a DJ Zed and Mr. Zeppo sound phenomena experience. Delightfully done, DJ Zed. And dear fans, you can support the content creation adventures of me, myself, and I, otherwise known as the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo and DJ Zed over at CTEG Studios, the imaginary production studio that exists only in my imagination, by heading over to soundcloud.com/Mr. Zeppo and listening to the collection of audio entertainment tracks provided there for your enjoyment, and let us know which ones you love, which ones you hate, which ones are kind of in the middle but maybe could use some improvement, etc. SoundCloud, for those of you who are not familiar, is a totally free and totally awesome platform for discovering new music of all kinds, up-and-coming artists from all over the world. And you can support them for free to you just by listening and sharing and supporting their profiles. And yes, I humbly invite you to explore the music of the Zeppoverse, featuring this profile page over here that the Mr. Zeppo SoundCloud, Mr. Zeppo and DJ said. It is not just music you've heard already on this show, but also music from the dance synthetica world that you have not heard on this show, that is there exclusively on SoundCloud to entice you for further listening. And there will be more tracks dropping regularly as DJ Zed and I focus on our musical adventures for a hot second, with an ambitious goal of generating a visual audio album experience in some kind of NFT, non-fungible token blockchain release format. Yet to be fully decided, but definitely working our way towards that towards the end of the year, or maybe into the first quarter of next year. You can participate in the formation of that experience by voting for your favorite tracks. Thank you so much for your support and participation in that, dear friends. All right, enough of the shameless self-promotion. Back to the weighty, serious topic. Friends, have you ever wondered, is there any real value in sharing a quote-unquote moment of silence? You may or may not have yet noticed that I occasionally invoke those here in the show, sometimes in the very beginning, sometimes buried in the middle to catch people off guard, sometimes all the way at the end just to see who's paying attention that long into the podcast. I do them in all seriousness. I know that many people poo-poo that and say, prayers and thoughts, meh, thumbs down, and there's a whole cloud of thought there. And there's a lot of trendy content you can regurgitate and repost with animosity at those who endeavor to pray or work mystical means that can be lumped together with praying. But I ask you, dear friends, setting aside, would you not want to endeavor to discern and find out and perhaps even definitively determine if these practices, when done authentically, sincerely, and tapped into some of these raw, organic, mysterious but fundamentally inescapable, energetic, frequency-oriented, functional phenomena that I've been referencing, to see if they actually help, to see if perhaps, as opposed to empty and thoughtless and undirected and insincere virtue signaling gestures, if you identify one thing, you often imply its opposite. If there is something to be critiqued and discouraged in empty, meaningless, inauthentic, insincere, fake baloney, phony, virtue signaling thoughts and prayers, then there must be something to its antithesis, its inverse opposite, I humbly propose. And that's why I have often on the show asked you to join me in a moment of silence. We are individuals. That is as undeniable as up is up. We are also a collective that is as undeniable as down is down. We are a collective that functions in many ways and along many vertices of collectivity, if that makes any sense. In other words, we are a collective of individuals right now. You and I are forming our own private little collective of individuals. You and everyone listening in the 20 plus countries that tune into this humble podcast, right? We engage in our own sort of creating our own miniature collective. As individuals, we are also a collective in that way just described in that meme. You are made up of billions of cells. The structures of your body house and give home to other cells that aren't even really technically a part of you, but which your body is so codependent upon that if they suddenly all decolonized you, you would not bode well. It would suck. It would demonstrably lower your overall well-being. Each and every single one of our individual cells is alive, is it not? And at the heart of its functioning, of its thoughtless capacity to do the complicated, life-sustaining things that if we sat down and tried to define for ourselves as uneducated, everyday average people, we wouldn't even be able to fully, truly explain. And that we don't spend any minute of our days consciously overseeing, and yet they carry on doing the very complex diversity of things. There must be some form of cellular, individual, and collective consciousness, or else none of that works. How would an inert, unalive thing with no form of conscious awareness be able to achieve the things that these colonies of interdependent cellular structures achieve? We call ourselves, this is my body, but we don't own this body. We hardly even know how to use it. Yes, of course, there are the exceptions, right? But you see my point. There are many dimensions along which we are a collective. As an individual, we are bifurcated across many instances of our probability waveform function variables. From the day we were born to the day we die, we explore all the possible variable outcomes of the choices we confront. And if quantum mechanical fractal algorithmic physics has got anything to say about it, the title of that science department may vary according to timeline. Each of us bifurcates into an endless expression of crescendoing, divergent and convergent explorations of those variable expressions of what happens when you do this or do that. Say yes or say no. Jump off the thing, stay under the thing. At every juncture where a fork in the road manifests probabilistic outcomes that diverge in their rendering of reality, multiple fractal recursive iterations of the holographic phenomena known as you, the individual, manifest the variable outcomes. Right? Okay. Mind-blowing stuff. Which many people will be like, poo-poo, I don't care, you crazy hippie new age nonsense robot from the future. You're crazy. Okay. That's a fun, easy, simple, knee-jerk playground response. Kudos for you. Do you want a gold sticker? Yay, you told me I'm crazy and wrong. Wrong, please. And or remember what we agreed to. We said no imposition of previous biases. Let's just explore the notion. What if that were the case? What if I'm not crazy, cuckoo, nut job, wrong? What if what I'm describing to you is not the absolute truth of monolithic, absurdly real, and you must bow down, but the closest thing, a thing that's quite close to pointing you in the right direction, because it's beyond language anyway. What if then? I'll tell you what if then. Our minds share the capacity to create the reality we observe. Not in stupid ways. I'll never manifest a gold-plated, fantasy war elephant to commute to work to that poops money so that I'm always rich. Like, that's not going to happen, right? Except for in the one absurdly most out there, tangent, variable timeline that's spiraling out of control in absurdity, and that one timeline is what prevents the rest of the probabilistic waveform functions from manifesting it, because it's there to preclude it as something that we can just be like, snap our fingers in a giant gold-plated money-turning elephant war machine. Can you imagine that world? No, of course not. Nonsense, right? I mean, other than and that's where we get our science fiction from. Bless the people who are stuck in that timeline. It's like that place that Loki goes to at the end of Loki before he gets to the that was a random drop into media review mode, but warning, spoilers. If you haven't seen Loki yet, you're missing out. Go watch it. It's awesome. I digress. We're talking about peace. Friends, fellow ambulatory transducing environment pods for the divine spark of consciousness, we can create worlds of peace. Worlds upon worlds, oodles and oodles of peace. It ain't easy. I'm not saying that it's easy. And for all those who've sinisterly and sarcastically and judgingly, mockingly said to my face in public or otherwise, on social media or otherwise, what are you going to do? Just hug your enemies to death? I mean, I don't know, but the Ukrainian people are sure giving that a whirl, and it doesn't seem to be, it's not 100% effective. They haven't completely stopped the invasion yet, but have you seen some of that ballsy-ass footage? There are people, and I know, we can argue to the end of the world about which source is the true sources of real, verifiable. I'm just saying, go, instead of arguing about it, instead of buying into, false, misaligning accusations, question your own content and move on. And I, having said that, I tell you, friends, there are bold and powerful protests happening, not just in this in Ukraine, but around the world, and there are terrible, tyrannical violations of peace and human rights happening all over the place around the world. If we choose indifference, if we choose to believe ourselves incapable, why are we voting for that? If there's evidence, which I argue that there is, as have many people around me and before me, and thus having, there's plenty of much better written books than I have yet to achieve that we could reference and point to. And I have in the past in this podcast, and I'm sure I shall again. But to not get distracted down that rabbit hole, if there's a means by which we can manifest together, collectively, through the hard work of answering the long neglected, long avoided calling to attend to our own inner healing, so that our cup may spilleth over, and we may facilitate others in attending to their own inner healing. And by that process, create a cascading chain reaction of alchemical transformative healing across the species-wide network of spiritual interconnectivity. If we have that option, why neglect it? Even if it's like, wait, I don't know if it's... Why wouldn't you invest instead of sitting around poo-pooing every attempt? Instead of sitting around praising the rationalization for egregious, militarized violence as a solution to a real or imaginary and made-up problem. Even when the problems are real, I say, why would you choose to vote for bombs and bullets when you could be choosing for transformational healing that actually addresses the root cause? And so I humbly invite you, friends, to join me in this and in my most recent episodes to pray towards that end. For the people suffering in Ukraine, for the people suffering in Palestine, and Syria, and in Yemen, and in a number of many other countries I have listed off before, and in the places that haven't even made the lists yet. In the places where the violence is not an organized militant invasion, but the chaos of turf wars between criminal factions. Everywhere that there is strife, where there is a Cain trying to kill an Abel, or an Abel trying to kill a Cain, I'll just pray that those on the aggression, those committing the aggression, those committed to their psychotic belief that they have the right to vilify another individual or another collective of individuals and thusly then butcher them, that they may realize how wrong they are. A moment of silence, dear friends, for the conflicts around the world, and to focus on wordlessly expressing the frequency of peace and forgiveness and self-realization. And you can tap into this simply by remembering times you have felt deeply at peace, times you have felt deeply aware of your own incorrect action and willingness to rectify it. Small, large, everything in between. Focus on these and do not cling to them, do not be drowned by them, do not be overwhelmed by them, but rather apply the power and energy within yourself to forgive and transform and transmute. Don't know how to do that? That's fine. Just give permission within yourself for the process to happen, and earnestly sit in this moment of silence and attempt to radiate peace, attempt to radiate forgiveness, attempt to radiate healing within yourself along the network of your own spiritual awareness and along the network of the spiritual communities of people you're connected to, and broadcast that to anyone and everyone in every conflict around the world. Atman Anatman Sat Nam. Namaste, friends. I've been deeply contemplating a beautiful little meme poem thing, image that was making the rounds not too long after the initiation of this most recent and very egregious incursion of violence in the world. And it touches on the incomprehensibility and the juxtaposition of egregious wrong and the ongoing mundanity of our lives, and it's one of these things that it's difficult not to be impacted by this, and it's challenging to discuss, and most just sort of don't even want to look at it. But I thought I'd share it to kind of round out the show, and to acknowledge the very simple reality that even as the most horrific of horrors rage on in the world, so do the simplest of joys and most beautimous, which is a real word, but the most beautiful of beautiful things continue. And the world has always been that, and let us not forget. And let us not pretend it hasn't. And I quote from this meme, artist unknown, but it's been making the rounds, and I hope you find it and share it. I quote, I am washing my face before bed while a country is on fire. It feels dumb to wash my face and dumb not to. It has never been this way, and it has always been this way. Someone has always clinked a cocktail glass in one hemisphere as someone loses a home in another, while someone falls in love in the same apartment building where someone grieves. The fact that suffering and mundanity and beauty coincide is unbearable and remarkable. This is one of the things that makes living life so precious. And no one can change my mind about that. Remember, friends, wherever you are in the world, if you are oppressed, if you are being aggressed upon, transgressed upon, you are not alone. There are people who stand with you in spirit and in protest. And when I say in spirit, I don't mean in the casually normalized lowercase s sense of the word. I mean in the all caps, ancient, mystical, esoteric, transdimensional sense of the word. And I encourage any and all of you for whom this does make sense to speak up, to let me know, to join in on the conversation, and to share this and the other episodes you appreciate, so that more people may find them. Not because I want to be famous, but damn it, if Alex Jones, no offense to Alex Jones, I don't mean to disparage him, but if he can be famous for the content he creates, then there's room in this world for myself to become a job creator and create a media empire that is anchored and rooted in the kind of content I create, which is, of course, not stuff for you to believe in and then rabidly attack others about, but rather something that encourages you, inspires you, and lifts you inward if I may coin a phrase, that you may go and find the healing you require, whatever that means to you in your life, for that is the greatest contribution you can make to facilitate the suffering in the world until we have achieved other things in the immediate term, in the here and now. There is great honor and a profound meaningfulness to that. And let no one talk you into minimizing it. Let no one talk you into dismissing it. All souls are suffering, even those caught up in the most mundane and or pleasant of trivialities. There is deep suffering. And all souls are capable of generating the healing we need in this world. As always, friends, I thank you quite humbly. If you appreciate what's going on with this content that I share with you, please head on over to solo.to/Mr. Zeppo and explore the many other dimensions of the Zeppoverse. And for those of you with the means, the capital income, and the disposable assets at your disposal to uplift and empower struggling content creators such as myself, be sure to visit the pages where you can contribute. For there is much work I am incapable of doing until that sort of facilitation flows. And I thank you most humbly for your audienceship and your consideration. I know, me, myself, and I all know that there's an endless sea of content you can be indulging in. For those of you who are tuning in to this, our deepest thanks, my deepest gratitude. Until next time, friends, I have been the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. At my side, always and truly, the silent and stoic DJ Zed, bringing you robot dance music, discotheque synthetica from another dimension. Here's one more little track to round out the episode, and I thank you for tuning in. manifest the peace you want to see in the world. May peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart. Stay tuned for more. The Almost Daily ZenCast. Be coming at you a little bit more daily, a little bit less almost.